Hey everyone, my name is Alex and I'm starting my YouTube channel. It's my first video. So I've been thinking about this channel for a while and I finally gathered the courage to start it and share my thoughts, my life experiences, things that I've learned along the way. I think this channel would be really helpful to kind of, people with my background, but I think all types of people, honestly, around the world. I'm an entrepreneur. I live in the United States. I'm also an immigrant who lived in multiple countries. I currently live in US, in Miami area. I will share my knowledge, my life experiences with people who are interested in business, entrepreneurship, maybe current events, and how all those things kind of converge and affect their lives. I wanted to start by telling a little bit about my life and how I got to sit where I sit right here. I was born in a country that no longer exists. I was born in the Soviet Union about 40 years ago, give or take. And I lived my first years under the communist regime. And I've seen certain things that, as a kid, like, I thought it was normal, but in hindsight, I realized, what kind of country we lived in, how oppressive it really was, If it's, people, maybe afraid to say what they think, or it's people who are afraid to really, do what they like or act the way they like because they're afraid what others will think of them, what the government will do to them, and what their neighbors will think of them. So that was, my first 10 years was spent under the Soviet regime, under the communist regime. Then my family moved to Middle East, actually, to Israel. And I spent the next 10 years of my life there. There I finished school in the army. I learned a different language. I learned Arabic and Hebrew. And then I lived there until I finished my high school and my army service. At 21, I had the opportunity to come to US for school. I came here to study. I studied computer science. It was around the year 2000. I studied computer science because back then that's what everybody was studying. And it was like at the peak of a dot-com bubble. So I remember I was really excited about, putting my computer degree to work. And all of a sudden, a year before graduation, 2001, the internet bubble popped, right? And thousands, tens of thousands of people were left without jobs. And I was left without a career path. I tried for months to find a job and I couldn't. And then I decided about, switching maybe to a different career. I was interviewing for different positions, and finally I met a person who worked in residential real estate. He was a broker, a builder, kind of a construction guy as well. And it took me under his wing. That's sort of importance of having a mentor in life. It's really, really important. Mentor or mentors for different areas of your life. I think I really learned a lot with his help, because this person's name was Richie. I learned a lot about real estate in the United States. I was living in Chicago back then. And I learned a lot about how to buy real estate, how to sell real estate, how to update, build real estate. And I worked for him for about a year. And then I met another person in real estate world, more on the commercial side. And I learned about self-storage. This person was another mentor. His name was Brad, and I learned how to operate self-storage businesses, which is a very interesting business. Something I've never experienced before in none of the countries, be it Soviet Union or Russia today, or Israel had self-storage. But it's a very interesting, peculiar business, and then it caught my attention right away. And then I worked for it for about another year. The pay was not high, but I learned a lot. And kind of armed with this experience of understanding residential real estate, understanding self-storage, I went to work for a bank, JP Morgan actually at the time. I learned about how to make loans, how bank values real estate, how bank values businesses, and how it makes loans. It's sounds pretty simple, but actually there's a lot of complexities that go inside of that. That's what I learned. I worked there for about 2 years, and I worked there up until the big crisis of 2008, the great financial crisis, the housing bubble as they call it. And I saw with my own eyes, working on Wall Street, what it looks like when a whole industry, shuts down and takes the entire economy, not only the United States, but the entire global economy with it. And why it happened. It was not only the housing market, but it was also the derivatives attached to it. I saw what sort of with my own eyes, what real panic looks like. It was a real panic on Wall Street. Companies worth billions of dollars, or at times tens of billions or hundreds of billions were failing. In front of our own eyes. It was AIG, Lehman Brothers, Bank of America, Countrywide Mortgage. I've saw those companies collapse. Some of them go entirely out of business, like Lehman Brothers or AIG, and some of them sort of just become a remnant of what they used to be. I've seen a lot of people get laid off during the crisis, which is, I think, we haven't experienced a crisis of this magnitude in about close to 2 decades, but probably about 18 years, right? Since 2008. I think we might be coming up on similar times in the next couple of years. So part of my thinking, part of why I'm starting this channel is to kind of prepare people for this, for those moments, and really have them think for themselves and be prepared for when the crisis arrives. So to make a long story short, I worked for JP Morgan, saw the collapse itself, people getting fired by the dozens pretty much every week. I've seen people being laid off and being led outside of the building as they put all their belongings, all their maybe 10, 15, 20 years of life, of work life, into a little box, and it were being let out by security because a lot of them were so upset and so angry at the company for just using them and disposing them when they no longer needed them, to be quite honest. And I decided right there and then, witnessing kind of this turmoil, chaos, and disregard for human well-being, I decided to be in business for myself. I didn't know what this business was going to be. I thought it was going to be in real estate. So I 2008, I applied to an Ivy League school. I got accepted. Not sure why they accepted me, but I was fortunate enough to be accepted, and I started studying high finance, really, on a graduate level. I was doing my MBA program. I spent about 2 or 3 years there. And while I was there, I decided to start my own company. And I realized that at the moment of crisis, with real estate prices going down by 10, 20, 30%, maybe 40% in certain types of real estate, it was a good time to start. And another good thing that happens in crisis, which I am saying, crisis is both a risk and an opportunity, right? I was nobody from nowhere at the time, and I decided to really didn't have a lot of capital to my name, but I decided to kind of call my friends and family and raise a small pool of capital. And together with my brother, we started buying foreclosed condos from the banks. Banks basically took condos from builders who could not finish them, they could not pay for them, and many of them were in the middle of an upgrade, and an upgrade was not finished. Banks could not sell them, could not rent them, and so they had to do something with them. So they were very, very willing to sell them at a big discount. So that's how our company started. We pulled a little bit of money. We started buying, we found banks would lend us, or even not only they would lend us, but sometimes they would give you the real estate and they would provide the loan to get it off their books. Because the banks would not do it back then, would really be scrutinized by the Federal Reserve, FDIC, and they were really forcing them to sell bad properties, foreclosed properties, bad loans, or get it off their books, to sell them as fast as they could. So we started a company, and little by little, within 2 or 3 years, I was going to business school in the morning, and in the evening, kind of in the afternoon, evening, we were looking at, my brother and I were looking at foreclosed condos, fixing them up, renting them, renovating them, and getting them ready for either to be sold or most of the times to be leased up. So we build a little portfolio. It was not a big one, maybe 60 to 80 units of single condos, 2 flats, 3 flats in Chicagoland area. And we kind of held on to them. And then came a time to graduate from business school. A lot of our friends were getting jobs with Goldman Sachs, with Morgan Stanley, with hedge funds, getting big bucks and signing bonus. But my brother and I looked at each other and we said, listen, we have a good time, working with each other, having an interesting time doing what we want. And we're in charge of our own time. Maybe we're not going to make as much money in the beginning as those guys are making, but eventually I think things are gonna pay out. And we're going to be in control of our time, in control of our destiny. And that memory of people being laid off by dozens for just 2 years earlier, right, 2008, 2009, was really fresh in my mind. And decided to become an entrepreneur. We finished our business school, and instead of going to corporate America, getting a job, we decided to open our little company that would manage, build, upgrade residential real estate. That was the goal. A little bit later, so we've been doing it for a couple of years. A little bit later, we got into, again, by happenstance, my former mentor called me and said, Brad called me and said, Alex, I have a little self-storage I want to sell to you. And we looked at it. We didn't know anything about self-storage, but again, it's not a complicated business, so we kind of look at it bits by bits, part by parts, and say, okay, you have 200 units, little units, right? It's like it's 10 by 10, 10 by 20 feet units, and people put their stuff to store there. Okay, so what do you have to do? You have to make sure that their stuff is safe, clean, they have good customer experience, and they're being treated fairly, and you operate a good business. We bought a small self-storage facility in Chicagoland area from an old-timer who didn't have a website, who did most of his records on paper, believe it or not in Excel. And we said, like, listen, we don't know much about it, but we probably can improve some processes. And that's what happened. We ended up first year kind of learning about how to operate it better, how to price it better, how to market it better. We built a website, we built other tools, we decided SEO, marketing, pricing better, advertising, different campaigns. And I think the rent started going higher, and the facility started filling up. So that's how we got into self-storage business. And we've been, in the last 10, 15 years, we've been focused on self-storage and other niche types of real estate, such as campgrounds, RV parks, some residential real estate, some more self-storage. So that's been our real estate business. I've been involved with starting other and building other businesses, which I'll be happy to share with you guys. But that's my background. I think what's important, I'm gonna, on this channel, I'm gonna help you with thinking about different businesses, how to scale them, how to build them, how to make smart financial decisions. Also about entrepreneurship mindset. It's not easy to be an entrepreneur, and I think starting from scratch, when you have a few people to turn to, people talk the talk, but few actually walk the walk. Having been in the shoes of an entrepreneur, it's not easy, but it's doable. It's exciting life. If you pace yourself and do it in the right way. And I want to share this with you, whatever I learned. I also want to share with you my thoughts on the world that's changing rapidly with the AI and end of globalization. I read a lot, so I think this channel is going to be about merging my life experience, what I see every day in the business world, with the books I read, and the different countries that I travel to. Thanks for watching, and I hope you found this useful. Thank you.